Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for those people who are dealing with a narcissist who happens to be a sun or moon in Sagittarius. And I am a sun in Sagittarius, and I put off this video to the almost end because I really was a bit stumped. I didn't know what I would talk about. Not to say that Sagittarians are perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but narcissism is something that I wouldn't say that a Sagittarian can't be a narcissist, but I was trying to figure out how it would specifically connect to the sign of Sagittarius. And I've come up with a few things. I don't know how many people will resonate with this. I want to first start out by saying that I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not playing one on YouTube. I'm simply trying to use labels that most people can resonate with, that they're familiar with. And narcissism is something beyond simply being self-absorbed or bragging about one's accomplishments or one's talents, if you will. This is something that occurs when a person has been abused. And actually, I feel like, and I think I've read this too, but I feel like this is true from what I've read about the person beginning to hyper-focus on themselves when they've been abused as children. Because when you think about it, if somebody heaps abuse on somebody, on a child, they will start to feel like they're like the center of the universe, albeit in a bad way. Even a scapegoat is kind of receiving a lot of attention. It's just negative attention. So that kind of mentality can be bred into the person so that when they become an adult and maybe they have moved away from their abusive parent or caretaker, they are thinking to themselves, okay, what now? All of a sudden, I'm just out here like a Joe Schmo. I have no, particular, people are not giving me special attention anymore. And it's almost like feeling lost when they're not getting that constant attention, so they have to seek it from others. And I've also talked about the difference between a covert narcissist and an overt one. I never hear them say overt, but I have heard malignant narcissist. The malignant ones are the ones that are very, have an active campaign to destroy a person's self-esteem, their sense of self, their ability to kind of like to trust in themselves. They can really create a lot of self-doubt in somebody that is probably pretty insecure to begin with, because not everyone will fall prey to a narcissist. Some people can see quite clearly that this person is not quite right, and they will avoid them like the plague. Other people, empaths, hello, a lot of us who are interested in spiritual topics like astrology and the tarot are probably not narcissists, are probably empaths. And so narcissists target empaths because they know that these people are very forgiving, are very accommodating. And whereas other people would just say, get lost, or who do you think you are, saying that to me, and just like cut them off immediately. No, the empath is usually going to give them second chances, third chances, 10 chances. And that being the case, it can create a lot of problems for the person who is involved with this narcissist, because giving somebody a chance after they've done something that has bothered you is perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned, unless it's something very, very serious. Because you have a forgiving spirit. But if you notice that it's happening over and over again, then obviously there's something that needs to change. So I think with Sages, it's kind of like in between covert and overt narcs. I don't think that the average Sag would be a mean narcissist necessarily, but they can exhibit traits that might be very off-putting to the person that they're dealing with. I'll get to that right now and then talk about the more of the covert narc. So the one that might be more on the overt side would be a Sag with a superiority complex who has a preachy attitude. Okay, Sages, that's one of the shadow sides of Sages, maybe being arrogant or like on their high horse about, moralistic and things like that. And one example would be like a pastor or some other spiritual teacher who is like preaching something that they are not personally following, but they're judging others. So judgmental behaviors and things like that. And what I was also trying to say in the other videos that I've done on this series is that a lot of the motivation for narcissism is to somehow get rid of that sense of self-loathing by projecting it onto to somebody else, the victim, the person that they are targeting. And so in Sag's case, feelings of inferiority or feelings of failing to live up to their own high standards of morality that, may be so high that it's hard not to be a hypocrite because the person is not actually doing, practicing what they preach. So that can create like a splinter. And Teal Swan, I don't know how many people follow her or not, but she's a modern day spiritual teacher, and she had a wonderful video, in the past about the shadow side of the spiritual teachers and how, some spiritual teachers, or maybe a lot of them, how they, don't acknowledge that part of themselves. And that's what leads to these scandals, like sexual harassment. That seems to be so common with so many spiritual leaders, not just in the organized religion, but in the New Agey types of community or the Eastern religion, the yoga community. And that can be very unfortunate because the teachings themselves that they are promoting may have a lot of benefits, but because they have adopted this persona of being above it all and being so holy and all this nonsense in a lot of ways, because they're human, they cannot acknowledge that human part of themselves. And so they kind of, it's like splintering off, and I've said this before. And so this is kind of like a problem because they will not admit to their own tendencies unless they get caught, and it's made public, and then they come out and with the remorse and all this stuff. But perhaps when they are confronted privately, they still maintain their innocence and all this stuff. These are people, and I'm speaking people that are in a position where there are leaders in a spiritual setting. But this can be even on a smaller scale when a Sagittarius parent has a child and is, kind of laying down the law to the child, and they are hypocritical. They are not following those rules themselves, or kind of doing it on and off. And the other thing is, and again, these are, it's kind of like, I want to say it's milder than some of the other scenarios that I have posted about with other signs. And some people may argue this is not really narcissism, but it can be if the person holds a position of power. And by the way, a parent certainly is this way. And another example with a parent is if there's a strict religion that the parent is expecting the child to adhere to. And, we could even talk about religious abuse. And I feel like that's one of the most serious forms of abuse, because it can really turn off someone to their spiritual beliefs, to spiritual beliefs altogether. And that would be very sad, So the other thing that, well, let me just talk about what I feel is probably more true for a lot of people. And this is the irresponsible quality of Sagittarius. Like I told you, I'm a sun in Sagittarius, and this is not going to be true across the board. Remember that I'm talking about problem personalities here. So this is for people who are creating problems for other people because of their own behavior. One of the things that I see with Sagittarius can be the Peter Pan syndrome of not wanting to grow up. And part of the reason I think Sagittarius doesn't want to grow up is because being an adult is not presented in a very favorable light in a lot of ways. It's kind of grim, where it's like society wants people to, settle down and buckle up, and basically just settle for a life of quiet desperation. I hate to put it that way, but I really feel that a lot of what our society promotes leads to just that. And it's kind of cloaked in this idea of people becoming grown-ups. And Sag is very independent and a lover of freedom. So Sagittarians may feel suffocated by anyone who tries to tell them that they have to do certain things to come across as an adult. Some of these can be working a 9-to-5 job when they may feel like doing things that, working, but working in a way that they don't have to kind of have that routine, where they can feel more autonomous. And this may make working for oneself very, very almost irresistible. But if the Sag doesn't have the kind of business that is consistently producing, X amount of money, they may like live a life that is not conventional and try to, do whatever it takes. And in some cases, they may be dependent on their partner to kind of pick up the slack. And I often talk about, like if it's a partner situation, with the Sag, with an earth sign or a water sign partner, this can be especially the case. And I would even go as far as talking specifically about the woman being a water sign or an earth sign, taking care of this overgrown child in her mind, and being the adult in the room, when it's really more complicated than that. Because if the Sagittarian really was able to look at their life in a more grounded and mature way, they could say, well, this is what I prefer, but this is the reality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to devote a year to working a 9-to-5 job, and then I'm going to save every penny I can so that I can live my dream life. And I'm also going to start, researching and maybe even soft launching my own business in the meantime and doing things more methodically. But the problem is that some people want to live in the moment and they don't want to plan. They want to be very spontaneous, and certainly fire signs can seem to favor that type of way of doing things. However, it can lead to perhaps them not feeling, not being able to have a plan that really will lead to them being able to meet their goals. And because, when a Sag narc is younger, let me tell you why I'm labeling that behavior as narcissism. Because I'm not talking about, again, it can be on the spectrum, but it's almost like having somebody else clean up their messes. And this can be the adult who is still taking money from their parents, and their parent may even target them because they know they have this weakness inside of them. And the narcissistic parent can create that narcissistic child, and even when they become an adult, kind of nurture that dependency. And what happens is that as this person gets older, they know full well that they're not maturing as they should, but they're stuck between this desire for freedom and also this kind of like repulsion of, having to do those kinds of things in order to make a living, because it feels so it feels very like unwanted, this kind of lifestyle that demands of them accountability. So they develop coping mechanisms for that. And one of the biggest things is blaming their significant other for quote unquote nagging them, blaming society for, not providing, for providing kind of a harsh type of circumstance, it's, if only we had a more just society, we would have, we wouldn't have the kind of demands, everything wouldn't cost so much, all those kinds of things. And blaming their parents, sometimes while still taking money from them. So there's a childishness that can develop, and the parent may be really creating this adult child out of this Sagittarian. And so if you're dealing with somebody like this, and it could even be like a parent who has always been irresponsible and maybe didn't give you what you needed growing up. They were not reliable. I mean, you could say that's another thing, a lack of reliability. And certainly children, rely on their parents to take care of them. And if you had this type of parent, it can be very difficult being an adult and still dealing with their excuses. Because as you get older, you will begin to see clearly who this person was and how they failed you. And they may not realize how much chaos they caused in your life. So if this parent was in and out of your life, who knows, maybe they have an addiction and they just come in and they leave and they use people to get money. Narcissism, I think addiction, when it's like a hardcore addiction, I'm not talking about somebody who goes out on Saturday night and gets stinking drunk. That can be problematic. But I'm talking about somebody who develops a serious addiction, regardless of what sign they are, to me is a narcissist, because their world becomes very narrow, and it's all about getting their needs met. And they can steal from family members. They can do whatever it takes to get their needs met. And so this can be a Sag, like any other sign, can fall prey to this. And that irresponsibility is part of that dynamic. By the way, it just reminded me of reading Elton John's autobiography, and he was talking about how he went into rehab and they made him wash toilets and things like that. And he said he didn't even know how to operate a laundry machine or something. They do that in rehab to humble people and to get them to assume responsibility. And it's kind of a mild way, but some people have gotten so out of control that they haven't even taken care of these basic needs for themselves. And it's a way back into self-care, into reality, really. And so, in dealing with these people, it depends on the type of relationship that you have with them. If it's a parent-child relationship and you're an adult child with this parent who has been AWOL in your life, maybe at critical times in your life, and they come in and out, and maybe now as adults, they want you to take care of them, or they want you to accept their chaotic life. One thing that I feel is very important is that you are very direct with them, not accusatory, but you just set boundaries with these types of people. There may be books that may give you some helpful tips. For instance, if you're the adult child of an alcoholic or other type of addict who also happens to be a Sagittarian, or other type of parent who, kind of shirk their duties and tries to kind of come in, maybe so they can feel that sense of, oh yeah, I'm the grandparent if you're having children yourself, and they want that kind of feeling that they have been a good parent when they really haven't. That's the thing. It's all about them and boosting up their own sense of self and whatever it takes. It's important to understand that a person doesn't have to be mean or outwardly abusive to another person to not wreak havoc on their life. A lot of different behaviors can create problems for others, and even serious problems. If you're with somebody who is who seems indifferent to your financial status, and they maybe let's say they have a gambling problem, and they take the money from the checking account and they go and blow it on gambling or whatever, and you try to beg them to not do that so that you can keep a roof over your head. These types of people are indifferent to that when they're all locked into their own needs, their own compulsive behavior. So you have to look at your own behavior and kind of see if you're a codependent, see if you're feeding into this bad behavior with your own actions or with your lack of action, with your inaction in some cases. I recommend a book called Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. This can give you a lot of inspiration and tips on how to cope with somebody who is turning your life upside down with their own out-of-control behaviors. But if you don't want to let go of this relationship, you have to set boundaries, and you have to be willing, if you have any kind of ultimatum, that you're going to go ahead with it, that you're not going to just kind of wimp out when the person crosses that boundary. Because people who are narcissists and other problem personalities, they tend to totally ignore, disrespect boundaries. And it's up to the other party to decide what you're going to do when somebody ignores your boundary. If you're going to just give them empty threats, or if you're going to follow through. Because it's not really worth threatening to do something like leave to someone if you're not willing to actually follow through. So that's one thing that I wanted to state. Another thing this is on you. This is all about you, what you must do. If you're with someone who is asking you for money, maybe you're in a relationship with somebody and they are not working and you're the sole breadwinner, or maybe they're making just a little money here and there, but they're not even contributing to the household. It doesn't matter if you make more money than somebody. That doesn't mean that they are not contributing. But if it's really lopsided where they work very few hours and they're just goofing off and keeping that money for their own spending money, and they just leave everything to you, you have to look yourself in the mirror. Why are you tolerating this? This is something that you are contributing to. You're contributing to their bad behavior by allowing it, and you don't have to do that. People who blame are, whether they like it or not, manipulating others. They're trying to get others to feel guilty about, placing demands on them. And, you have to be able to stand in your truth. And if you can see that your partner is not, kind of like pulling their weight to some degree or the other, then they have to man up or woman up themselves. They can't just continue doing what they're doing. And I'm not saying that everything has to be 50-50. It's possible for one person to be the breadwinner and another person maybe takes care of the home, watches the children. I don't think it has to be where both people earn money. No way. I don't believe that. But if you feel like you're doing everything, then you have to really look in the mirror. If this is a situation where you have a parent who is a Sagittarian, and you feel that they have narcissistic tendencies, where they are maybe using money. Sagittarians may attract abundance, and if they don't feel good about themselves, they might try to manipulate people with money. But it's very tempting to take money when you feel like, hey, I could always use money, but you have to put your self-respect first, especially if you feel like there's a lot of degradation that goes along with it. So I'm just, these are just things to think about. And I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.